So, good evening. I am so excited to be with you. Tonight we're going to talk about memory. And I thought, what a perfect place to do this. I have a brand new book. It's not coming out until November. It's the very first time I'm giving this talk. And you will see it on public television in November, December. This is really important because memory makes you who you are. It is your most precious treasure. Unless your life has been hard, then it is your worst curse. I want to start with this story. I do my work because I love stories. I love it when I can help someone be better. And at Amen Clinics, we did the world's first and largest study on active and retired NFL players at a time when the NFL was lying that they had a problem. Who saw the movie Concussion? Awesome movie. Watch it again and stay to the end. I'm actually in the credits because the writer and director followed my players. So we have scanned, that's what we do at Amen Clinics, we look at people's brains and treated, we do that too, 200 NFL players. And the level of damage was terrible. But 80% of our players get better if they do what we ask them to do, and I'm going to teach you tonight. And one of my players is Ray White. Ray was a linebacker for the San Diego Chargers. And the reason Ray joined my study was that I would see his wife, Nancy. And Nancy had just been diagnosed with a kind of dementia called frontal temporal lobe dementia. She's 56 years old. It's a wicked disease. And the doctor said, you should find a place for her to live because within a year she won't know your name. And he was sad. And he said, is that true? And I scanned her. And we do a study called SPECT. And SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. And what you see is the front part of her brain, which is toward the top, is deteriorating. Now, SPECT looks at blood flow. So the holes, she doesn't have physical holes in her brain. What that means, she has severely low blood flow in her brain. And I looked at Ray and at Nancy, and I said, we have no proven cure for this. But if she was my wife, and I like my wife, if she was my wife, I would do all these things that I'm going to tell you about tonight. And 10 weeks later, this was her brain. Wow. And she was remarkably better. And now we're 7 years later. And she still knows his name. Now, I'm under no illusion that we're not in a war for the health of her brain. But there is so much hope, even if you've been diagnosed for dementia, that you can be better. I mean, maybe not cured, but better if you do the right things. And my favorite picture is actually not the scans. This is Ray. So notice how Ray, who was a very big boy, is not so big. And I looked at him and I'm like, Ray, he lost 30 pounds in 10 weeks. I'm like, how'd you do that? And this is what he said to me. He said, I know if I did everything you told us to do, she would do it too. I would model a brain-healthy life for her. So sometimes motivation is about love. And Ray loved Nancy. And one of the questions I have for you is, how much do you love yourself? Because people go, oh, I can't give up sugar. And it's like, Well, that's sort of an abusive relationship because sugar does all sorts of bad things in your body. So you're in love with something that beats you up. Does that make any sense? I have been in love with people that were not good for me. Has anybody in this room been in love with someone that was not good for them? Yes. I'm done with that. That's not going to happen anymore. All right, so the problem is age-related memory problems are escalating in our society. It is estimated that Alzheimer's disease will triple in the next 30 years, and there is no cure for it on the horizon. And it devastates people's lives. Many of you here know people who've had dementia of one form or another. Dementia is the umbrella category. Alzheimer's is one of the types. And if you're blessed enough to live until you're 85, you have a 1 in 2 chance of being diagnosed with dementia of one form or another, which means if you live that long, it's a flip of the coin whether or not you have your mind. And that's the most precious thing that you have. And the new research has taught us that Alzheimer's disease doesn't start when you get it. It literally starts decades earlier. So if you're going to lose your mind at 80, you had problems in your brain in your 50s. So here's a woman I diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at 59. Her brain was likely having problems in her 20s. So when you first start to have symptoms, that's not early in the problem, it's late in the problem. So you don't want to wait until you get sick to get serious about being well. So Memory Rescue, when I wrote Memory Rescue, it's really based on one very simple idea. You want to keep your memory? You want to rescue your memory? You have to prevent all of the risk factors, all the things that steal your memory. And that's what we're going to do tonight. And I came up with a mnemonic, so that's a memory device, to remember the 11 primary risk factors that steal your memory. And it's around these 2 words called bright minds. And here they are. Blood flow, retirement and aging, inflammation, genetics, head trauma, toxins, mental health problems like depression, immunity, infectious issues, more rampant than you can imagine, hormone problems, diabetes, which is diabetes and obesity, and you're not sleeping or you have sleep apnea. So what I'm going to do, the book goes into great detail and there's over 1,000 scientific references, so I've thought about this a lot. But let me give you some simple tips around each of these. So basically I'm going to give you 11 takeaways tonight. So we have to look at blood flow. Your brain uses 20% of the blood flow in your body. So even though your brain is only 2% of your body's weight, about 3 pounds, it uses 20% of the oxygen and blood flow that you breathe. It is the most metabolically active organ in your body. And why is blood flow essential? Because it brings nutrients to all of your cells, and as importantly, it takes away toxins. So without good blood flow, the organ ages. So the risk factors, so these are the things that increase your risk of dementia: hypertension, except later in life it's actually low blood pressure. So you want to be in a healthy range. Having a stroke increases your risk. Having heart disease, because then you can't pump blood. My favorite one, of course, is erectile dysfunction. It should horrify people. I mean, I really like my wife, but did you know that 40% of 40-year-olds have erectile dysfunction and 70% of 70-year-olds? And I'm not okay with that. So that means I have to take care of my blood vessels, because if you have blood flow problems anywhere, erectile dysfunction, it likely means they're everywhere. Also, if you're not exercising. So that's really the secret. The little take home is you need to move. And if you're 80 and you can walk 3 miles an hour on the treadmill, you have a 90% chance of living until you're 90. But if you can only walk 1 mile an hour at 80, you have a 90% chance you will not live until you're 90. So what that causes me to think of is walk like you're late. And my mom does that. My mom just turned 85, and she just is like hard to keep up with her. She moves. That's good for you. So the strategies to increase blood flow that have good science behind them. Exercise, the most important thing you can do. It actually boosts a chemical in your blood vessels called nitric oxide. And that makes them rounder and more flexible and can lower your blood pressure to more normal. Prayer and meditation completely fooled us. We thought, oh, you're meditating or you're praying, everything calms down in your brain. Absolutely not true. Especially to the front part of your brain, better blood flow. A little meditation and prayer is not going to hurt you. Ginkgo, it's my favorite supplement for blood flow. The prettiest brains I've ever seen, and I've seen probably more than anybody in the world. The prettiest brains are people who take ginkgo. Cayenne, so pepper, increases blood flow. Rosemary, beets, and celery. So very simple, very practical things you can do to boost your blood flow. So the one big idea is you got to exercise. And I don't know, do you have ping pong tables here? Yep. It's the best exercise because it helps you with coordination and it's aerobic. And you got to get your eyes and hands and feet all to work together while you think about the spin on the ball. It's an awesome exercise. So do what you can, right? Don't do more, because as you're going to find out, falls is a major cause of dementia. Why did Reagan get Alzheimer's disease? People think, oh, he had it in the White House. He didn't. He had jelly bellies in the White House, and that was a problem. But he fell from his horse shortly after he left the White House, and that accelerated his dementia process. Retirement and aging. When you stop learning, your brain starts dying. So I hate this. So I've been looking at scans for the last 25 years. And one of the patterns I've clearly seen are a problem is as we age, our brain gets less and less active. Sort of like as the wrinkles in your face begins to fall off your skull as you age, that same process is happening in the brain. But it doesn't have to. This is my friend Doris Rapp, who's 82 years old. She has a stunningly beautiful brain. Why? Because she does all the bright minds things. She cares. And she's still, now I think she's 87, and she still works every day. So the risk factor is age, right? As we age, I was practicing one of my PBS specials, and my mom, she gets the neighborhood in Corona del Mar to come over her house, and and one woman was 60, and she goes, now that I'm 60, I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, I don't want to exercise, I don't want to eat right, I don't want to have to think about it anymore. I'm like, cool. As long as you're okay with the consequences of accelerated aging, depression, memory loss, incapacitation. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I love my children. I have 4 of them, and I have 4 grandbabies, and I love them dearly. I never want to live with them. I never want them controlling my life. I don't want them taking my license from me. I'm dead serious about this. This is an act of love. right? But as you age, because this process naturally happens in the brain, unless you fight against it. Not learning new things, that's why this forum is so important for you, because it keeps you engaged. Being lonely or socially isolated is a risk factor for dementia. And having high ferritin. What is ferritin? It's iron. If you have high iron in your blood, you're more likely to die early. You're more likely to have blood flow problems. You're more likely to have heart disease. Now, how do you get high iron? Red wine and steak. Or cooking in iron pots. And one of the reasons women live longer than men? They bleed, right? Throughout, 40 years of your life, you had periods, which meant you lost a lot of blood, which meant you also lost a lot of iron. For men, it's, don't bleed unless somebody cuts us. We have higher iron, generally. And so you want to donate blood. I was in the spice market in Istanbul 2 years ago. And outside the spice market, they have these huge jugs of water with leeches in them. And I looked to my wife, who's a nurse, and I'm like, why the leeches? Who's going to buy a leech? And he said, oh, many people do, for health reasons, because people bleed themselves. And I'm like, I'm going to donate blood. I'm like, no. All right, so the strategies: donate blood, new learning, brand new study out of Baltimore, volunteering. Especially when elderly people volunteered with young people, they decrease their risk of dementia. It's fascinating because it's about engagement and losing the loneliness and the isolation that is a problem. One of the supplements, I'll tell you about a lot of supplements tonight that I like. Resveratrol has very good evidence. And people go, oh, but I get that in the red wine. It's like, yeah, but it's got all the other problems associated with it. We'll talk about that. And then antioxidants. And I have all these fruits and vegetables because it's the best way to get antioxidants. And try to have 2 or 3 times the number of vegetables to fruit, because sugar is the devil, right? But as long as the fruit is wrapped in fiber, it's okay. But that's why I hate fruit juice. Fruit juice is not a health food. It's bad for you because it's too much sugar. Okay, so the one big takeaway from retirement and aging is new learning. And one of the best things you can do is learn a musical instrument, because your brain has to figure out all sorts of new things, and it's often a coordination exercise too. All right, then we get to the really bad guy, which is inflammation. Inflammation comes from the Latin word meaning to set a fire. And when you have inflammation in your body, it's like you have a low-level fire destroying all of your organs. And inflammation comes if your gut's not healthy, this thing we call leaky gut, which means the lining of your gut becomes porous, and things that shouldn't get into your body end up getting into your body. Gum disease, I just was always too busy to floss until I saw the connection between gum disease and dementia. And I'm like, no, I'm not too busy to keep my brain. So I floss. I go to the dentist. I was just at the dentist this week. He said, your teeth look better than ever. I was like 4 years old, so happy. I wanted to put a little sticker on the refrigerator. I called my wife, and she's like, seriously, this is what makes you happy? So there's a couple of blood tests you can get. One's called CRP, or C-reactive protein. It's probably one of the best signs of inflammation, so you should have that every year and make sure it's not creeping up. Another one is called homocysteine, because when that is high, people have more heart disease, more dementia. And we do a blood test at Amen Clinics. I have a clinic nearby in Costa Mesa. It's just 1 drop of blood, and it measures your omega-3 fatty acid. index because omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. So I think everybody should be taking fish oil, even if you're a vegetarian. I just like sneak it in, because fish oil has special omega-3 fatty acids that you cannot find in any food, any vegetables. So low levels of omega-3 fatty acids are associated with inflammation, depression, dementia, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it, it's a problem. So the strategies are focus on your gut health, floss, probiotics, they help your gut, curcumin, so I don't like curry. I just don't. So I take a curcumin supplement. But my wife's figured out she sneaks it in everything. She's just sneaky that way. She actually makes this curry salmon chowder that's amazing, right? She's figured out how to get me to like it. But it's really good for you because it's anti-inflammatory. And then omega-3 fatty acids. And if you only can do one thing for inflammation, you should be taking fish oil or making sure you eat more clean fish. So you have to be careful. Some fish are not good for you, like swordfish. It's not good for you because the meat is so dense, it concentrates toxins. You don't want toxins. We're coming up to toxins. Notice I'm putting all of the big ideas on the slide as I go to it. All right, genes. This stuff runs in families. If you have a family member with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia, that increases your risk. And there's actually a gene called the apolipoprotein E4 gene that significantly increases your risk if you have one copy and dramatically increases your risk if you have 2 copies. Now, I think everybody should know because it's not a death sentence, but it's something that says you better be serious about preventing it. And I argue in the book we should actually screen children for this because if you have that gene and a head injury, it dramatically increases your risk even further. And kids who have that gene should not play contact sports. So if you have it in your family, you want to be screened early, be really serious, exercise. But notice green tea, blueberries, there's curcumin again. It shows up over and over again, as does vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids. The research with those 3 and memory is very solid. Okay, so the big idea, if you have this stuff in your family, you have to be serious. I have a brand new book called The Brain Warrior's Way. We have it here tonight. And I argue, I wrote it with Tana, that you're in a war for the health of your brain. Everywhere you go, someone's trying to shove bad food down your throat that will kill you early. Toxins are more laden in our food and in our personal products than ever in the history of the world. You know, we live in a toxic society. If you're armed, prepared, and aware, you can thrive for a long time. I don't want you to be like sheep led to the slaughter. And way too many people in this country are sheep. When 2/3 of us are overweight, 50% of us are diabetic, it means we're making a lot of really bad choices. All right, head trauma is the H. This is one of my favorite patients who died last year, but I had the privilege of being able to scan him. And you know, Muhammad Ali was one of the most articulate people in the 60s and 70s, but when I met him, he wasn't. He had dementia, and it was head trauma, dementia. So boxing, good for your brain or bad for your brain? Bad for your brain. Definitely. So risk factors for dementia, if you have a single head injury with a loss of consciousness, it increases your risk. Or if you've had multiple head injuries, even without a loss of consciousness, it can damage your brain. Now, I'm a psychiatrist by training. Why would I care about head trauma? because when I started looking at the brain, I saw undiagnosed head traumas were a major cause of depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, learning problems, panic disorders, and homelessness. They ruin people's lives. Your brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter. Your skull is really hard and has sharp, bony ridges. For this group, the most important thing you can do is be really thoughtful in how you move around. Falls are the #1 cause of death and disability in the elderly. You need to be cautious and careful, and if you have a dog like mine, you need to have the lights on when you go to the bathroom, because he brings his toys, and I mean, he's a dog, he doesn't care, right? He's not thinking if I'm not there who's gonna feed him, right? He doesn't have forethought. But I adore him, but I have to be very thoughtful in how I move around, or I will trip and fall. So you want to reduce your risk, which means you wear your seatbelt. You don't ski without a helmet. Even helmets are not really all that helpful for you. You're thoughtful, you're cautious in what you do. Limit sugar. There it is again. Drat! He's such a bummer. Wait, I have a fun story where I was really a bummer. They did a study at UCLA, and they gave rats head injuries. So they whacked them in the head. And one group, they gave them their regular healthy diet. And the other group, they gave them their regular healthy diet plus fructose, which is fruit sugar. Right? I mean, think orange juice. 3 weeks later, the group with the regular healthy diet could learn the maze that they could do the maze they already knew how to do. The other group couldn't do it at all. They were confused, they were isolated, they were more depressed. Why do we have Gatorade on the sidelines of a brain-damaging sport? Do you see the insanity? That's what I mean when I say we're in a war. Gatorade is a weapon of mass destruction. Right? ISIS has nothing on Gatorade. Hyperbaric oxygen. I don't know if you've heard about that, but going into an oxygen chamber, we found, I published a study on soldiers who'd been involved in blast injuries, significant increased blood flow with hyperbaric oxygen. And then in my NFL study, so this is what I did. I taught them about their brain. And then I gave them a multiple vitamin fish oil and something called Brain and Memory Power Boost, a supplement that works in multiple mechanisms. After an average of about 6 months, 80% of them were better. And I published that study. That's the study on the right. So the most important thing you can do with head trauma is to protect yourself from any more. If you've had them, protect yourself, be smart. Coordination exercises, so you see them working out on a ball, that means they're activating the coordination parts of their brain. Okay, now to the bad guy, toxins. So, the star of memory in your brain are these two thumb-like structures called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is Greek for seahorse. And so I got a seahorse, a picture of a seahorse stoned to represent toxins. Don't you think that's cool? I'm like so happy with this. All right, I have to tell you this story. So it's a number of years ago. This couple had been going for 3 years and had spent $20,000 in marital therapy because they wanted to be married. But they were awful. And after 3 years, the therapist, who was tired of them, failed them, gave them an F and said, you guys really should get divorced. And they got mad at her and said, but we paid you all this money. And she said, well, I know a doctor in Costa Mesa who takes care of really difficult people. You should go see him. And when, it's part of our process. If we see you, we want to look at your brain. I mean, how do I know what's going on in your head unless I look? So we scanned the wife, and that was her on the left. It was fine. But the husband's brain looked like he's an alcoholic or drug addict. And I'm reading his history, and he said he never used drugs and he didn't drink. Now, I've been a psychiatrist for a long time. And what's the first thing you learn about drug addicts? They lie. A lot. And so in front of his wife, I went, is he telling the truth? No, I asked him, I said, is that really true? You don't drink and you've never done drugs. He said, Dr. Amen, I have many problems. That's not it. And so I looked to the wife and I said, is that true? And she said, oh yes, Dr. Amen, ever since I met him, he doesn't drink, he's never done drugs. He's just a jackass. Oh my God. And I started chuckling. But in my mind, I'm like, why does he have a brain that looks so bad? I mean, this is what a toxic brain looks like. And so I'm thinking of all the possibilities in my head. An environmental toxin, an infection. He had a near drowning episode at some point, had a loss of oxygen. And, so I went through the list and I looked at him and I said, where do you work? I work in a furniture factory. I said, what do you do? He said, I finish furniture all day long. He was doing the worst drug of abuse. The worst drug of abuse I've ever seen effect on a brain scan, inhaling organic solvents. So I looked to his wife and I said, so when did he become a jackass? She said, what do you mean? I said, did you marry him that way? Do you have father issues you're still trying to work out? She said, no. When we got married, he was great. It wasn't until about 5 years ago. And then she put her hand to her mouth and she said, oh my God, the time he got this job, his personality started to change. And it's that moment that I've seen thousands of times at our clinics, that he went from being a jackass to someone who was sick and needed help. Psychotherapy is not going to fix a brain that's being poisoned. Does that make sense? Yes. And so I had to rehabilitate his brain so that he could be a better husband. In the process, and what she got for him, not that she wanted to divorce him because he was a jackass, is she saw him as someone who had tried to support his family by going to work, and in the process he was being poisoned. So you see how it completely changes the dynamics of the situation. And over time, they're still married, and they're not spending any money at all on marital therapists. I mean, how do you do marital therapy and you never look at someone's brain? It's a little nuts. Okay, so many toxins. Smoking is a toxin. Secondhand smoke is a toxin. Alcohol and drug abuse, I have to just be honest with you. Marijuana is not going green. Marijuana is toxic to the brain. We just published a study on about 1,000 marijuana smokers compared to healthy. Every area of their brain is lower. I'm happy they made it legal. Please don't put potheads in jail. It's a bad idea. Sleep deprive them, give them bad food, let them hang out with people who do seriously bad things. It's a bad thing, but let's not say it's a good thing. And alcohol is not a health food. It decreases the size of your brain. It makes you more impulsive. There's more violent deaths related to alcohol than almost any other drug, except maybe methamphetamines. And it increases your risk for 7 different cancers. So if you're going to have 1 or 2 drinks a week, who cares? If you're drinking 1 or 2 every night, you're increasing your risk of a smaller brain and cancer at the same time. I'm not a fan. Chemo and radiation, some people said, oh, don't put that in, it'll hurt people's feelings if they had cancer. If you had cancer, you need to be dead serious about being well. These things are toxic. Thank God they're toxic, right? They're toxic to cancer cells, but they're also toxic to normal cells. All that means is I have to be serious. I have to take my health seriously. Because, I mean, like if you had a head injury, okay, got to get on the program like our NFL players did. Heavy metals, if you're like me and had all sorts of mercury fillings, I had all of them replaced. Mercury is a neurotoxin. That's not a surprise. Lead. And they go, oh, well, they took lead out of gasoline. Yes, but not out of aviation gasoline. So we have 100 pilots that we've seen. 70% of them have toxic brains. Do you think it could be related to that? Or they're married to women. Did you know that 60% of lipstick sold in the United States has lead in it? I call it the kiss of death. Not kissing. And aluminum. And you're like, oh, that's controversial. Aluminum is controversial. So why would you ever put something on or in your body that is controversial? In the United States, if it's not proven to be harmful, we'll sell it to you. In Europe, if it's not proven to be safe, they won't sell it to you. I don't know about you, when it's coming to me, and I love me, and I love my babies and my wife. No way, unless it's proven safe. Mold, we could go on all night about that. Carbon monoxide, but let's talk about personal care products. Now, you might want to just take a picture of this because I don't have time to go over all of it. So there are toxins that we breathe, like air pollution and gasoline fumes and fire retardants that we ingest. But I want to focus on what we put on our bodies. Because when I wrote Memory Rescue, I was so horrified by what I learned. There's an app you can download. I'll tell you in a minute. It's called Think Dirty. I love the name. And things like phthalates and parabens and aluminum and these things called PEGs, trixalan and acrylates, all of these are endocrine disruptors, which means they will steal your testosterone, which we're going to talk about. Oh my goodness. Whatever you put on your body goes in your body. And I love this one book called The Toxin Solution by a friend of mine. He said, you know, the guy getting all sexy for his date, right? He showers with the body wash and the shampoo and then the deodorant and the cologne. And when you add up the number of toxins that are disrupting his ability to produce and use testosterone, he's going to be very cute and not be able to do anything on the date. It's not a good thing. So what do? You limit your exposure. You buy organic. People go, well, there's no difference between the nutrition in an organic apple versus a non-organic apple. That's totally correct. Except one has poison on it, poison residue, pesticides. We talked about the gut, didn't we? What I didn't tell you is your gut has 100 trillion bugs. There are 100 trillion bacteria that make vitamins and they make neurotransmitters and they protect the lining of your gut. And what do pesticides kill? Pests, like bacteria. So when you're eating non-organic food, it is damaging the lining of your gut. It's sort of a bad thing to do. So you want to be very careful with what you put in your body. Read the labels. You should have a whole study group on labels here. And why would you put something in your body that you don't know what it is? Scan products, I'll teach you how. And if you're going to use pain medicine, don't use Tylenol. People who use Tylenol got Alzheimer's disease 2.5 years earlier than the general population because it disrupts your liver. Where people who took Motrin and Advil, don't do too much, got Alzheimer's disease 2.5 years later than the general population. Why? Because Advil has anti-inflammatory properties. Tylenol disrupts your liver. All right, you have 4 detoxification pathways, and none of this is hard. Kidneys, you pee things out. Gut, you get it out another way. Skin, you can sweat it out. And liver is very important detoxification organ. There's a supplement I love called N-acetylcysteine, NAC. And brassicas, or the vegetables, actually one of my favorite restaurants is called Babette's in Crystal Cove. Awesome. And they actually have a side dish called brassicas. Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, those things, they are detoxifying vegetables. All right, so the one big idea for toxins. Download this app called Think Dirty. It's free. And then you can scan all of the personal products in your bathroom. And it rates them on a scale of 1, really good, to 10, kill you quickly. And you can see, well, how are you doing? And when I did my bathroom, I was horrified, embarrassed, felt awful. And then I went on vacation to the North Shore in Hawaii. And I'm like, okay, I'm not using the stuff they have at Turtle Bay. So I went to the grocery store. And it took me an extra 10 minutes. I started scanning the things I wanted. You know, like the body wash. The thing I usually got, soft soap, was a 10. Suave was a 5. So they're the same cost. What do I care? I love myself. Let's go with low poison. Not hard. None of this is hard. You just have to be thoughtful if you want to keep your memory. Okay, mental health issues. Here's my specialty. Did you know that things like depression, here's a stressed out seahorse, chronic stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, even ADHD, increase your risk of dementia. And the worst one on this is depression. Depression doubles the risk for women, quadruples the risk for men. So what do you do? There's so many things to do, and I've written lots of books about it. But if I had to boil it down, you should exercise. Head-to-head against Prozac, they're equally effective. Meditation and hypnosis, so powerful for anxiety. Vegetables. If you eat, there's a linear correlation between the number of fruits and vegetables you eat a day and how happy you are. Up to 8. More than 8, it doesn't matter. But if you really focus on 5, 6, 7, 8 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, your mood goes up. I mean, that's like so cheap. And no side effects, as opposed to Prozac that has side effects. Tomatoes, in particular, are the big winner. You want to kill the ants? I'll talk about that in a minute. Develop a habit every day. Start the day. It's so easy. Today is going to be a great day. As soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, or as soon as you're conscious, and I actually have it on the top of my to-do list in case I forget. Today is going to be a great day. No matter what I'm going to do today, today is going to be a great day. Because if you do that, your brain will find out why it's going to be a great day. If you don't do that, your brain will find out why it's going to be a bad day. So you can discipline and direct your mind. And then we just talked about toxins. You got to get rid of toxic thoughts and toxic people. They're not helpful for you, if you can. Which is why, if you're having problems with your kids, you want to take care of yourself so they're not controlling the last years of your life. Because payback, you know what they say about that. There are certain supplements that I really like. I love SAMI, saffron, yes, the expensive spice saffron. Head-to-head studies with Prozac and Zola, equally effective. Omega-3 fatty acids for everything. For anxiety, we use GABA and green tea. You're feeling anxious, go get some green tea. All right, so the one thing for mental health is don't believe every stupid thought you have. So it takes a little work, but whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking. And then ask yourself if it's true. You don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. But nowhere in school do they teach you to question your own nonsense. And so if I had the thought, my wife never listens to me. And I've had that thought. That's a toxic thought. It's a thought that makes me sad and, more likely to pull away from her. But when I write it down, Tana never listens to me, and go, is that true? I go, no, she listens to me all the time. Today, she's not listening to me. So I take away the thought's power. But if I don't question it, I believe it. If you don't question your negative thoughts, you believe them, and then you act out of the erroneous thought that you have, which then could cause marital problems, or cause work problems, or cause relationship problems. Don't believe every stupid thing. I have this new book coming out for kids in September called Captain Snout, and the superpower questions, don't let the ants steal your happiness. Infections, immunity, and this is an infected seahorse. Autoimmune disorders, asthma, cold sores, and things like Lyme have been shown to increase your risk of memory problems. Did you know Chris Christopherson was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease? And he actually saw one of the doctors that works with us, Mark Philaday. He had Lyme disease. And on an antibiotic and hyperbaric oxygen, he got his memory back. Well, how exciting is that? And I love these two graphs, or images. So on the left is the highest incidence of schizophrenia, so a wicked psychiatric disorder. On the right is the highest incidence of Lyme. Notice how they're almost identical. That infectious disease is much more common among people with dementia than we ever thought. So if you suffer with brain fog, it's just one of the things we should be thinking about to help you. And how to boost your immunity: vitamin D, probiotics, zinc. Garlic is amazing, as well as onions, and mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms have been found to help boost your immunity. So how simple when they have onions and garlic and mushrooms, just, an extra helping would be okay. All of you should know your vitamin D level. How many of you here know your vitamin D level? See, that's terrible. All of you should know what it is, and you should never let the doctor tell you it's normal. How many of you wanted to be at the bottom of your class in high school? But you're normal, right? How many of you wanted to be like the C- person or the D+ person? 2/3 of America is low in vitamin D because the dermatologists won. They made you afraid of the sun. But you were made or evolved in the sun, and without enough sun, you don't make enough vitamin D, and it is the universal risk factor for early death. So you should all know it and then optimize it. I keep mine high normal because I always wanted to be at the top of my class. So the one idea is to know your vitamin D level, and don't let the doctor tell you it's normal. Say, I want to know the number. What's the range? The range is 30 to 100. I want to know where I'm at. And I try to get my patients between 50 and 100. Okay, hormone problems. Look what happens to testosterone. This is the thing that makes you happy, that gives you a memory, that makes you virile and motivated and engaged in life and strong. And our society is not on our side. So aging does it. Sugar does it. Sugar burst. Get a sugar burst? So if I would have eaten the dessert they tried to give me tonight, and your new chef, she's phenomenal. Is Helen here? Where's Helen? She's not here. All right. She's phenomenal. I love her. The meal was perfect until dessert. And she's like, but it's organic cane sugar. Cane crystals. I'm like, what does that mean? Anybody know what organic cane crystals mean? Sugar! It's sugar! Pro-inflammatory. Decreases your immune system. Makes you stupid. Steals your testosterone. All right, so these are hormones you should know. Thyroid, critical. And how you strengthen your hormones? You start lifting weights, even if you're a girl. And girls go, oh, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to be big. Yeah, you get small when you lift weights, and you get strong. Now, I know many of you have been to the hospital. The people who get out of the hospital, because hospitals are very dangerous places. If you've ever seen how they feed you, you know they're trying to make you sick so you come back, right? I mean, oh my God, really? The people who get out of the hospitals go in with muscle. Muscle is your protein reserve. So all of you should be pounding some iron. That's me with 22 pounds of weight around my waist. I did 10 pull-ups. I was pretty proud. You want to lose weight. Why? Belly fat takes healthy testosterone and turns it into unhealthy forms of estrogen. Bad thing, cancer-promoting estrogen. Get rid of the sugar and the toxins. Zinc, tyrosine, DHEA is a wonderful supplement. Probiotics, and then medicine to replace the hormones if needed. All right, but the most important thing is kill the sugar. Diabetes is a combination of diabetes and obesity. Why should we be concerned? 2/3 of America is overweight. 40% of women are obese. It's like nuts when you think about it. New study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, 50% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And do you know what diabetes does to your blood vessels? It makes them brittle and much more likely to break. Devastates you. I had a father-in-law that died from diabetes. He was completely addicted to sugar, and even though he was diabetic, and he said he'd kill himself if he had to go on insulin. When he went on insulin, he didn't kill himself with a gun. He killed himself with sugar after he lost his legs, his heart, his eyesight, and his mind. I saw it ravage him over 30 years. It's eyesight, because they're blood vessels that get damaged. You don't want even a high normal blood sugar. This is why you have to kill sugar and foods that quickly turn to sugar. Bread, pasta, potatoes, rice, sugar. I just see them as the enemy. Why? Because I love myself. Y'all should look up Meghan Trainor's new song, Me Too. If you haven't heard it, it's phenomenal. It's my theme song. But it's about caring for yourself. So a friend of ours, Dr. Cyrus Raji, when he was a medical student at the University of Pittsburgh, published a study that said as your weight went up, the size and function of your brain went down. Oh, I read that first study and I lost 30 pounds. I'm like, I'm not going to be a dinosaur, you know, big body, little brain. You're going to become extinct. So I told you I was like, I can be a real bummer. So I'm in the grand old, at the Opryland Hotel in Nashville. It's gorgeous. And I'm speaking at a conference where I speak every 2 years. And one of my best friends, Mark, who's there, and his wife, Debbie, I watched what Mark ordered for dinner. Like a chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, gravy. And I know Mark has diabetes. And I'm like, Mark, how tall are you? He's like, I'm 6 feet. I'm like, how much do you weigh? He said 244 pounds. So on my phone, I calculated his BMI, his body mass index, was 33. I'm like, dude, you're obese. This is at dinner. He's like, Daniel, you're so cold. I'm like, not nearly as cold as you're going to be when you're 6 feet under. He didn't touch his dinner. The next month, he lost 10 pounds. 2 years later, and I don't forget our conversation, but I'm like, okay, chill out. We meet for lunch. He looks phenomenal. I'm like, what happened? He said, thank you for that hard conversation. He lost 52 pounds. He cut his insulin dose in half. And my favorite question, was it hard? He's like, Daniel, he said, being sick is hard. Not having an erection, that's hard. This is easy. And then his wife joins him and they're telling me about their sex life. And I'm like, I don't need to know all this. But I was so proud of him because he made that radical shift and it wasn't hard. Being sick is hard. Doing the right thing is what should make you feel good, not, oh, I'm deprived, I can't have this or that. It's like, well, why would you want this or that that damages you? It's just something that's not right in your head if that's the truth. All right, so slow weight loss, not a fan of rapid weight loss, and love Marie Osmond, hate Nutrisystem. All you have to do is read the ingredients. Jenny Craig, Lindora, whatever. Read the ingredients of the food they're trying to sell you, and it's not real. And anybody says you can have brownies and ice cream and lose weight, you're not doing it in the right way. So high quality calories. This is the term I want you to learn, low glycemic, high fiber carbs. Carbs are not the enemy. Broccoli's mostly carbs. Spinach is mostly carbs. It's the ones that quickly turn to sugar. So high glycemic is how quickly does a food turn to sugar. And you want it high in fiber because that moves things along and decreases your risk of cancer. Protein and healthy fat at every meal. Hate low fat. Hate low fat. Why? 60% of your brain is fat. So when you go on a low fat diet, you're not giving the brain the nutrients it needs, but don't eat bad fat. So try to eat healthy fat, walnuts, salmon, avocados, olive oil, some supplements. Cinnamon actually decreases your appetite. It's good for so many things. And the one thing that I've learned about helping people lose weight, calories do matter, but you got to be the right kind of calories. So I am a value spender. I hate wasting money. I have plenty of money. Money's not my issue, but I hate wasting it. The lights are on at home. I'm irritated. I don't, my favorite hoodie is $39 from Hollister. I love that. Value. I'm getting value for what I spend, and I'm getting value for the calories that I spend. So I want you to think of calories like money and not waste them. All right, last thing is sleep. If you're not sleeping 7 hours a night, this is why Trump's making all these bad, it's like, don't tweet when you haven't slept. It's like, the tweet's not going to be right. Less than 7 hours is associated with more accidents. It's associated with more marital fights. It's associated with more weight problems, and it's associated with low blood flow to the front part of your brain. Judgment, forethought, impulse, control. And sleep apnea, this is actually a sleep apnea scan. This is the area that first dies in Alzheimer's disease. We see it in sleep apnea scans. So you want to be very careful. If you snore, if you stop breathing at night, or somebody tells you you do, you need to get it diagnosed and treated. So I'm not going to go over all of these, but they're sleep robbers, things that steal your sleep, a warm room, a light, noisy room. Don't eat near bedtime. It's a secret. I'm going to tell you why. Give yourself at least 2 hours. Because if you eat close to bed, your body feels stress when you're going to sleep. And what normally happens if you don't eat before bed, your blood pressure drops 10%. So that's called a normal dip in blood pressure. Those people who eat near bed, they're called non-dippers. They don't dip. And it puts them at risk, higher risk for heart attack and strokes. But I have to eat at bed. Okay, we'll play the risks. Is that good for you? Alcohol, yes, it'll put you to sleep, but then you'll wake up 3 hours later. Caffeine, don't get me started. Worry, stress, restless leg, think magnesium. Load up on magnesium. Sleep enhancers, the room a little bit cooler, darker, quieter. We have a whole hypnosis program for sleep. Magnesium, melatonin I love. Melatonin actually boosts your immune system. Tart cherry juice has melatonin in it. 5-HTP if you're a worrier. If you have bad thoughts at night, journal them and get them out of your head. Warm bath and put socks on. Simple things. You just have to have the right discipline. So the big idea that I went, okay, what's the one thing you should do on your phone? Don't take your phone to bed. But if you look at your phone later at night, put blue light blockers on it. On the Apple phone, it's actually called Night Shift. I circled where it is on your own. But on your computers, they're free blue light blockers because when you're getting all that gadget light, it's turning off the production of melatonin. Okay, bright minds, blood flow, exercise, retirement aging, new learning, inflammation, omega-3s. You have it in your family, you need to be a brain warrior. Head trauma, gotta prevent it. You do that with coordination exercises. Toxins, think dirty. Mental health, kill the ants. Immunity, vitamin D. Hormone deficiencies, who knew? Kill the sugar. Diabetes, think of calories like money. And sleep, don't let the white light in. We are done. It has been my pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amen. We didn't have a bottle of fish oil, but we wanted to give you this olive oil as a thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.